to me. I just need this to be real. I don't need no
Alrighty, microphone test 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Alrighty.
I can hear you. It works.
No, you're good. Welcome to the first episode of the KNN podcast. Today, for episode 1, this is mostly just going to be introductions. We're here to discuss our favorite choices books. Basically, this entire podcast is just me and my best friend Nessa talking about our favorite books. Nessa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Nessa, and as Kai said, we're going to be going over our favorite choices books, and we'll probably cover our favorite books in general. My favorite choices book was probably...
I think if I had to pick mine at the moment, it would have been either Wake the Dead or Immortal Desires. Both of which were really good.
Really good.
I am a sucker for vampires. I'm not big on zombies, but the story was really, really good and detailed. Now, if I had to pick a favorite of all time that was their most in-depth story, it was probably Endless Summer.
I like the It Lives Beneath and that series. That one really had me hooked because of all the mystery and stuff that was attached to it.
Right? I feel like the It Lives anthology was one of their betters. I wish they had continued it. I did play the fan game It Lives Within. You can download on the internet, which was also really good. It was definitely one of their more graphic stories, which I think is what made it so entertaining. A lot of the authors that helped write those don't work for Pixelbear anymore, unfortunately. But I want to give you all a warning for people that are watching this. This is going to be pretty raw. A lot of this is just going to be us talking, whether it be about random books that we've read or anything Pixelberry related. And mostly we're going to be reviewing our favorite books, and next time when we actually review a specific book that we pick out together, we're going to be going over both the pros and cons. But like I said, today is just introductions, just to get a first episode done. So
this is works of 2 years, should I add?
We have been trying to do this for probably a good 2.5 years now. It hasn't really worked out. We finally got everything together to be able to plan this out and just do it. And if it takes off, it does. Hopefully it does. But we both realize just how much we love talking. You know, most friends, you know, when they grow up...
Most friends. Get us more viewers. That'd be great.
We're the type of friends that if, you know, most friends that get drunk and go to the casino together, we get drunk and we find ourselves lost in a library or a Barnes and Noble. One of the two.
Or we're up at Barnes and Nobles at 3 o'clock in the morning drinking coffee.
Yes, that is us. We'll just find any excuse to read some sort of random book. Now, as for me, I'm pretty diversified in my genres. I have, I think, every genre of book on both of my bookshelves. So, I guess we should move on to, before we go into detail about our choices books, let's pick a real book that we both like reading. What's your favorite real book?
Iron Fey series.
The Iron Fey series? By Julie Calga?
Yep.
I think if I had to pick one, I have so many, but I really liked the Fallen series by Lauren, and I really liked the Hush Hush series by Becca Fitzpatrick. I'm a sucker for anything that has angels or Nephilim in it. They were both really good. Hush Hush was one of those thrillers that kind of kept you on the edge of their seat, but had a really good romance in it at the same time.
I like the Iron Fey because it was kind of like a mystery for me. It took me like a good couple of chapters to realize that the main character was actually a princess.
For those of you who don't know...
And I didn't find that out until you told me.
For those of you who don't know, the Iron Fey series was a series that was loosely based around A Midsummer's Night's Dream. kind of like a modern rendition of Shakespeare's play. And Julie did a really good job at building that universe. All your favorite cliche characters from the play itself are there, so there's the nostalgia with that, and all the new characters that you meet along the way. Plus, I mean, it has Ash in it, and if you love a good, I guess, really angsty male love interest, then he's definitely the one to go for.
It was a really interesting book, actually.
It was, and I think what made it so interesting was that she did such a good job with the world building and made it really realistic. I have a hard time reading fantasy novels just because it's kind of hard to envision a world that doesn't exist. And so
Yeah.
she did a good job with her descriptive details, because I've read a bunch of fantasies where they do not do as good of a job.
Yeah. I agree with that.
What about current choices books? What's a favorite?
Current choice that I'm reading? I just got done reading the. I just got done reading the Princess Swap, and that was pretty interesting. But my favorite book I'm reading right now is where did it go? The First Come, First Love.
Oh, First Comes Love?
Yes.
That is a good one. I did like First Comes Love. Now, the only thing that I find wrong with that one is, honestly, the way they wrote that made the character kind of sound like a homewrecker. So, but I guess you have to find it really funny about how vindictive the main character is, and that she's willing to do anything to get Rebecca away from Blake. I guess that's the funny thing. Makes it so entertaining.
That's why I like it so much. It's because I find it so funny because she's so determined.
I'll tell you, one that was surprising to me was Roommates with Benefits. In the beginning, I thought it was just going to be another contemporary romance. And it definitely started out that way, and I was losing hope pretty fast just because none of the characters were really likable. But then you get deeper into the book, and then the character development kicks in, and then you get more behind the main character, and then Drew. And you learn more about Drew's past and Drew's character and what made him the way he was. I guess I should say
Sounds like I should get more into it then, because I had given up on that book for a little bit.
It gets better, but it took such a long time for it to actually get better that, honestly, I don't know if it was worth reading in the end. Because when I want a book that hooks you right off the spot and keeps you hooked throughout the entire book, and Roommates with Benefits just didn't do that. It took forever to actually get to the point. So much so that it drug the story on, and it wasn't until midway through that you finally get this character development that makes you look deeper into it, be like, oh, maybe there is something more to this. But it just took them so long to get to that point.
Yeah, that kind of happened with a book I had read. It was actually on an app that is no longer available, so I can't remember the name of it, but
Was it Love Link? I think I know what app you're talking about.
what's the app called? I forgot.
It was Love Something.
Yes, that's what it was called.
Well, hopefully not literally Love Something, but continue anyways.
It had love in the name. That's all I remember. Anyways, I had read a book on there, and we didn't actually get the character's backstory until like the very end of the book. And so like I'd given up on the book like in the first week of reading it just because I was not hooked on it, and it was not very interesting, and there was nothing really that jumped out to me. They also just did a very poorly job writing the book. So
that's the thing about visual novel apps. There's not a lot of good ones out there. In fact, Chapters and Choices are really the only good ones. I mean, there's Romance Club, but Romance Club to me is really low on the graphics, and the writing is not that great. But Chapters, they have some of their own stories, but really most of them are books from the real world that they got the licensing rights to and were able to transform them into visual novel apps. And in fact, Chapters is how I found a lot of my real books. I found them on Chapters and be like, oh, this sounds legit. So I looked them up on Amazon and end up ordering them. It's probably why I end up spending so much money on Amazon. And half of them come from book sales. So
I think we need to take away your Amazon services for a while.
I just realized that I have a huge bookshelf in the back, and it's double stacked, almost all the way to the bottom. That just shows you. And then I have another bookshelf sitting right next to me right now that also still has a bunch of books on it. But.
And you won't share with me? Rude.
I'm sorry.
Next time we meet up, we can do a book trade-off. How about that?
Sure. If I don't get it back, though, you're not going to like the ending of that story.
Or we could go to Barnes & Nobles and just buy a bunch of books and spend all of our money.
I mean, isn't that what we do anyways? But
well,
really,
Barnes & Nobles is more expensive than Amazon.
It is so true. And the thing is a lot of books at Barnes & Noble are used. You can get really good used books off Amazon really cheap. Now, you do have to watch the condition. You always just want it like new. Anything below that is just usually means the book has been torn up. But
it's not worth it.
I don't know if you remember this, but I made like custom bookmarks for all my books. So each series has a custom-made bookmark.
You still gotta teach me how to do that.
I know. And hopefully we'll get to do it soon. I was just bored, and I just looked this up on Pinterest one day, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. And then ended up going to Hobby Lobby and buying a bunch of key charms and ribbon and cardstock and printing out all the covers of my favorite books and made bookmarks. And I will tell you, it was a time-consuming process. I mean, it took probably a good 4 or 5 days to get them done.
I think you said it took about a week whenever we were talking about it, because you warned me that it was going to take about a week.
It's just a lot of patience on tracing and cutting the right angles and then gluing and letting the glue dry. But I think tying the key charms to the ribbon and then tying the ribbon to the bookmarks was the hardest part, if I'm being honest. Literally killed my fingers from having to tie those knots.
I think everything kills your fingers. You've complained to me so many times of how your fingers are hurting because of something you've done.
I know. I mean, I'm the type of person that smashed my finger in a hole punch trying to do this, so.
I remember you telling me about that.
But we're getting off track.
I feel really laughing, but it's kind of funny.
We need to get back to choices. I don't know how we got on my bookmark tangent, but anyway.
We were talking about our favorite choices stories, and I started talking about a random app that sucks.
Okay, we've done our favorite choices books, so I guess let's move on to our least favorite choices books. We'll start with old choices, and then we can move on to, let's move on to the most modern hated choices book, in our opinion. I'll let you go first.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
My least favorite choices book was probably Immortal Desires.
What? Well, you better have a good reason behind that. I'll stick my boys on you if I don't.
What friends do you have that are gonna fight me?
I was talking about Cass and Gabe, thank you very much.
I can't be, I'm laughing so much. I'll let you go first and explain.
Okay, well, we're getting back to that. I want to know that reasoning. Okay, so if I had to go old, and we're going to go back a few years, at the time it was really good and I really did enjoy it, but the series got more and more boring as it. But I had to figure out, if I had to pick a series that I didn't like that's older, it'd have to be the Royal Romance. And that's because the first book was really good, and even the second one was pretty decent. The third one is where it really started going downhill, and then the Royal Heir and the Royal Finale series was not good. And I'll be honest, I didn't really care for the holiday novella that they made for it either. And I think that's just because it was almost the same thing in every story. It was up to the main character to solve some sort of problem. Instead of the king stepping up and helping her with a bunch of it, no, it's up to the queen or duchess, depending on your path, to save the whole country of Cordonia. And I think that's what got old, is it was the same thing every episode. Or I guess I should say chapter. And if I had to go more modern, it would probably be either the Nanny Affair or the Duchess Affair. The Nanny Affair, I mean that just goes without saying why it was bad. But nothing is as bad as the Duchess Affair. That is my least favorite book right now. There's so much wrong, and I would go into more detail, but I don't think it's appropriate to do on a live podcast. But I mean, for those of you that are old enough to read the book, I mean, it goes without explaining why it was bad. And maybe some of you enjoyed that something, and I'm not judging. This is a judgment-free zone. You all are free to like what you want, but I did not like the Duchess Affair. I don't like erotic romances like that. They're just not. They're just terrible. They're just really, really, really bad.
Yeah, I had a friend who read it and said that she didn't end up liking it. That she stopped reading it, I think, halfway through.
It's sad because I like historical romances for the most part. Like Desire and Decorum on the Choices app was really, really good, but not the Duchess Affair at all. The Nanny Affair at least had a plot line, and though it was pretty cringy throughout, and I'm not a fan of the dating or being in some sort of intimate relationship with somebody whether it's an arranged marriage or not, it's still not morally right, but whatever. At least the Nanny Affair had a plot, so that's why it ranks a little bit higher, but it's still very, very low on my list. It's down there with Surrender, and I didn't like Surrender either.
I forgot. Why did you not like Surrender?
Well, I think it was more than anything I didn't like Reagan as the love interest. He was rude, had a really just crappy personality, and maybe it's just because in BDSM I'm not really, as a male, I'm not the type of person who likes to submit and listen to other people. I don't like being bossed around or being told what to do 24/7, even though that's not really what it's all about. I did not like the way he treated the main character, but at the same time, I didn't like the main character either, just because she was so weak and didn't stand up for herself. Half the things he said would have been unacceptable. I bet him like, no, nobody talks to me like that. That's how I view it. But we need to steer back around.
My friends before, if they looked at the wrong, if they even look at me the wrong way.
Exactly. Now, you need to sit here and explain to me why Immortal Desires was your least favorite book.
Okay, fine. Well, it was, like, a good book. Like, I really liked the plotline and the story. But, like, the ending, I really just wasn't satisfied with the ending.
Okay, I will agree with you on that. The ending sucked. Like, it was bad. And I was sitting there at the end like, what the heck was that, Pixelberry? But at the same time, it was so well loved that it has been the first Choices book that was supposed to be a standalone and ends up being backtracked for a sequel that comes out next year. So I guess there is that. But I was also...
Maybe I'll like it better after I read the sequel. Like, maybe it'll make more sense to me.
Well, that's the thing. I was talking with my my other friend the other day about this, and I was like, this right here, they're going to have to rewrite the ending to make this make sense. Because if you remember, they erased everybody's memories at the end of the book. Even your mom's.
Yeah.
And yet you get turned into a vampire at the end of the book. So I don't know how that's going to work. Are we going to have to hide it from our mom? Is she going to have to find out all over again? Plus, they're going to have to come up with a new threat. Like, so we killed the creator, right? The one that, the creator of all vampires, the big bad. Who's going to be more powerful than that as an enemy in the second book, right?
The crazy psycho dude.
It's going to be like so hard to top that as a big villain for the second book. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Now, I didn't mention one of like my favorite books of all time, which had to have been The Cursed Heart. The Cursed Heart, I have a thing for the Fey world, but that was a beautifully written book, and the artwork was amazing. Plus, I mean, you can't not love Kieran. He has to be
You love
one of the
anything that
best
has to
love
do with
interests of all
fantasy.
times. Did you ever finish reading that one?
Which one?
The Cursed Heart?
Yes, I believe I did.
What were your thoughts on that one? It stands in one of my top tens.
Uh, I liked it. It was really interesting.
I think what sold that one is they did a good job with the relationship build of the book. It had one of the most
Mm.
in-depth romantic relationships and was a really good representation on, I guess, how powerful love was. Now, the main
Yeah.
character might be a little naive at sometimes, but as much as people didn't like that, that's how the main character was supposed to be. They were supposed to be really sweet and innocent and a little naive because they were supposed to be the perfect person, the person with the purest heart. And that's
Like,
how
me.
Kieran's heart was healed, was because of the main character's unconditional love. And it was the type of book that gave you butterflies. It was a good one. I really did enjoy that one. And the ending was really good, and I'm happy that it got a second one. Now, if we want to talk about inaccurate stories, Untamable really offended me. As a person who grew up in
They meant their
Oklahoma,
Oklahoman standards.
I was like, what the hell? That's not Oklahoma at all.
By the way, for the people that read that book, me and Kai come from Oklahoma. We live in Oklahoma for Pete's sake. It's not accurate.
And let me tell you even something more embarrassing for them, is the book took place in northwest Oklahoma. Guess where this person lives right now? This person lives in northwest Oklahoma, has for over 8.5 years. And let me tell you, the way they described it with the rolling hills and the trees and the vistas and the lakes, and I'm just like, you know what northwest Oklahoma is called? To the rest of the world that doesn't know, it's called the Great Plains. So let me tell you, there are no trees. It's all canola fields. There's nothing. There's nothing. For far, there's a bunch of dirt. We have dust storms up here that get so bad in the springtime when the farmers are tilling their fields.
Oh,
There's nothing pretty. And on top of that, horse ranches, really, Pixelberry? Oklahoma's cattle country. Thank you very much. Not horse country. We don't have a bunch of horse. I don't know if you noticed this, but when the book first came out, they had a lie. I guess they just didn't print. So the Drummond family. Well, they have the biggest ranch in Oklahoma. That is true. And they said that for what it was a horse ranch, and that it was the biggest horse ranch in the country, and that it was worth over 54 or $58 million, and it was the largest, and it is over 44,000 acres. So they got all the measurements right, but it's not a horse ranch.
It's cattle.
It's cattle. It always has been. That's what the Drummond family. That's where their money came from. Was cattle. They sell cows. And I was like, out of every state, if they wanted to do horses, we got Montana, we got Kentucky, we got Wyoming. Those are all horse states. They have more horses up there. I mean, the wild Mustangs that were originally here when the country was founded over like 200 years ago, they were all over the country, and then they were herded up into the Wyoming and Montana area, and that's where they reside. All those original wild Mustangs. So I'm just like, they picked the wrong state to do horses.
Well, there are actually a few horse ranches. I'm actually related to someone who owns a ranch, and they raise horses, and all their neighbors raise horses. But you are correct. The main thing we raise is cattle. I actually raise cattle. I help my dad with our cattle. And so, like, I like the book, but I only like the book for the love story, Not because it talked about Oklahoma, and not because it said we're a horse country, because we ain't. We're cattle country.
And the funny thing about that is it still says when you load the book that Oklahoma sells more horses per capita than any state in the country.
They need to change that.
I know,
That's
right?
not.
That is not. Do you know, for people who don't know, over 50% of the beef that this country consumes comes from Oklahoma and Texas. Mostly
Yep.
Oklahoma. So that's the funny thing. I'm not saying people in Oklahoma don't have horse ranches, but that is not the majority. Horses
Yeah.
cost so much money to raise.
Mhm.
Equestrian ranches are so expensive to upkeep. So cows actually have.
We have to do horses is when Oklahoma does their rodeos. And even then, certain towns don't have rodeos.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Tulsa rodeo used to be really big, but it's not something that we do on the regular. Like when my family went up to Wyoming for a vacation, they do a rodeo in the town that we were staying in almost every day. And they have the local town folks that come out, even a lot of the younger kids, they all come out and they participate in the rodeo. So
Yeah.
it's just a big thing up there. And they do it with wild horses. Whereas if you watched a rodeo in Oklahoma, a lot of them are bulls. I mean, there are some horses, but a lot of them are bulls. That's
McAllister, where I live, we actually have a rodeo a few times a year, and we do things like barrel racing, and they do the show horses and the jumping competitions and stuff like that. But most of the time, our quote unquote main events are the cattle roping or the riding the bulls and stuff like that, because that's what gets them the most money. My cousins and my god family actually participate in them, and most of the time the only time that they use their horses is either A, when they're doing the roping competitions, or when they're doing it's something that we do with cattle. I can't remember what they do, the roping competitions and stuff like that. Oh, they jump from the horse to the cattle, and they ride the bulls that way. That's another thing that they do sometimes.
I do remember a lot of these events. It's been a long time since I went to one, but I did like them growing up. But moving away from the setting and accuracy of Untamable was the way they portrayed us speaking.
Yeah, that makes me mad.
Like, let me tell you, Oklahoma, we do not use contractions every other word. We're not Texas. Now, Texans may do that, and there's always been this rivalry between Texans and Oklahomans, where Oklahomans think Texans are, I guess, uncultured in the way they speak. Which is funny because we have a bunch of Texans in my family. So it's like a running joke in our family where the Texan side of our family, they're the uncultured ones because they're the loud talkers and they use all the contractions. But it's nowhere near as bad as like Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. The way they have us speaking in Untamable is somebody from the deep south. Not somebody from the Midwest. And they keep talking about Oklahoma as if it's a southern state. It's in the southern part of the United States, don't get me wrong. But it's also we're called the Midwest. That's what we are.
We're in the middle.
We're not a southern state. And the fact that like they even left off the ending of Untamable where they're talking about a sequel and it was like looking for a couple, looking for love under the southern skies. I'm like, ugh. I was just I sat there. I was like, these people that wrote the book really needed to do more research on Oklahoma. And I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I mean, the way they portrayed Oklahoma was so far off that it just wasn't accurate. If they had gotten some parts of it, if they had even used a real town. For those of you who are thinking Thunder Valley from Untamable, not a real town in Oklahoma. It's not. There are hundreds of small farm towns that they could have used. I live in one. And no. And if they wanted the setting to be right for it, and they wanted that beautiful setting, because Oklahoma, the unique thing about Oklahoma, I'm bragging about my state right now, I know, is you can see all 4 terrains
We
in Oklahoma except for ocean. We have desert, we have we have huge vast forests, we have plains, and we have mountains.
we have 2 national state parks. One is a forest, and then the other one is actually a forest and a mountain, Robbers Cave. It's a state park.
And of course, we have the Black Mesas up in the Panhandle.
Yep.
And I just feel like they should have gone with like southeastern Oklahoma and around the Robbers Cave area or Turner Falls or something like that if they wanted the setting to be more accurate as far as what they were trying to portray in the book. Because they chose, unfortunately, and I don't know if they researched this or not, but unfortunately for them, they chose the Great Plains and then tried to describe it as someplace beautiful. There's no beautiful places. The only mountainous part of this part of Oklahoma is the Gloss Mountains. And they're made out of clay and stone and granite. There's no trees.
We do have some prairies and stuff and some like lands that are like that, but they're not that big.
No. I mean, if they wanted that, I think you would have to go to like the southwestern part of Oklahoma. And, then you would get more of that like prairie-like land. But we don't. I just laughed out loud. I just had to when I was reading the book in the beginning when it first came out a couple of years ago. I think it was last year. And they were like, and it took place we live in northwest Oklahoma. With the rolling hills and the trees and the horses and the grass. And well, we got grass. It may not be alive, but we have grass.
And we have some horses, and we have some plains, but not in part of Oklahoma they're trying to say it's in.
And I was just like, if a tree tried growing out here, it would be growing sideways with how high the wind is. So northwest Oklahoma is not only the Great Plains, but it is also the windiest part of Oklahoma. On the regular out here, if the wind is blowing, it's blowing like 30, 40 miles an hour on the regular. And then it can get up into the 60s and 70s during a storm. But that right there.
Yeah, don't y'all have the most tornadoes?
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, y'all have like the most tornadoes ever.
Oh, we get the most tornado-like weather. Now, unfortunately for me, where we're planning on looking at moving in the future, I'm sorry, we're getting off track for this podcast, but I just have to say, if you're more Oklahoma, which is near Norman, it's hit by more tornadoes than any other city in the state. And I was like, do you know how expensive it is to live in Moore just because of that? Because they have to rebuild their city every year because it just gets blown to the ground by a tornado. We were driving through there the other day, and they had roofs on houses that they were rebuilding because the storm that had just blown through ripped all the roofs off. So then all these houses are under construction, trying to get those roofs patched back up.
When we actually stayed up in Oklahoma City for my prom, I actually got like 3 or 4 tornado warnings because we were so close to Moore and Oklahoma City and stuff like that. And the next day when I went onto Facebook, I actually got a notification on Facebook that made me check yes or no if I was safe after all the tornadoes because we got hit with Moore and the surrounding towns and cities got hit with more than 5 tornadoes that night.
You know what's really funny is the fact that if you were hit by a tornado and you were injured, the first thing you're going to do is go to Facebook to answer that. Yes or no, was I injured in this tornado? Am I okay? I don't think they quite thought that one through. I'm just like, yes, let me check my status on Facebook to answer this very important question. And then Facebook is going to post it to your like status update and be like, I'm not okay. I was hit by a tornado. Send help, please, through Facebook. Not, I
No,
don't
like
know,
I
call the
didn't.
police. Call
I
911.
didn't get notification that there was a question. I just went to go check on Facebook because I had some relatives who were actually driving through there who weren't answering their phone. So I went to go message them, and that's when the question survey popped up.
I just find that really funny.
It was really funny.
I think these people through this podcast learned a lot more about us than they ever thought possible. In the short 30 some
Oh,
odd minutes, we're just like, you all learned a lot about us. Yes, we're very proud of
going on
Oklahoma,
40 minutes.
apparently.
Well, we are from Oklahoma. We are very proud of where we come from. By the way, your accent has popped out
I know.
so many times, and
Well, when I get
so
aggravated and I start talking about my state and how I feel insulted, you're gonna get that Oklahoma accent out.
so did mine.
That is how you know you're in big trouble. It's just a sign.
But no, like I have family from Texas and stuff like that, just like you do. So I have a mixture between an Oklahoma accent and then a Texas accent.
But anyways,
I did it once to you on purpose.
are you over there muting me?
I don't even
I
know
know I'm annoying, but
what.
I'm not that annoying.
No, I don't even know what we were talking about. But I made you purposely mad one day just so your accent would come out, and it made me cry. I was like cracking up laughing.
It's all because you wanted me to talk like that. Now I see.
Yes. Did you just now realize that?
No, no. That was my inner epiphany from that day. I'm just like,
Oh, okay, I was so confused.
But anyways, I think we're coming to a close on this first episode of this podcast. It has been wonderful to sit here and talk. It's what we do best. We're going to try to post this at least once a week. And the next time we're going to come in with a more focused talk. And we're going to be picking a book. And we're going to have been reading this book. So we can talk about it in more detail. And then when the podcast comes around, we'll be able to talk about it. It's going to be more focused than today. Today was pretty raw. We wanted you to get to know us on a more personal level before we started this podcast. And I think you all learned more about us than you ever wanted to.
We didn't want to like start the podcast with like talking about books and have you guys not know anything about us.
And we figured, why not do an intro episode? It's definitely the perfect way to get to know us. And then sometimes you might catch like just a random podcast episode where it's just us talking. Just about random stuff.
Life, school, work.
Random 3 o'clock in the morning conversations about road trips.
Oh, yeah, we planned a random road trip to Colorado at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I know. That's the type of people we are. We do our best planning at 3 o'clock in the morning. Somehow it doesn't really come out during the afternoon or the next day.
And we talk about books a lot. I remember me and you, we were going over the Iron Fey series together, and I called you at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I just got to the chapter where I found out she was the princess, and I was so mad at you that you did not tell me that she was the princess.
And I was like, well, I mean, if you read the back of the book, it kind of tells you.
Well, no, remember we got I got the Kindle ebooks because that's what you had. By the way, he's the one
that's
that
right.
recommended
I'm
the
like,
Iron Fey
well,
series to me.
I didn't have
He's the person who recommended the Iron Fey series to me, and I was too impatient to read them. I wanted to start reading them now so me and him could go over it together. And so instead of buying the actual paper books, I was dumb and bought the Kindle ebooks without doing absolutely no research. So for the very first book, I was very confused as to what I was reading.
And then I get this phone call and she's like, she's the daughter of King Oberon. I'm like, yes. She's like, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, Well, for me, it was on the back of the book.
And then I was like so mad at you for a bunch of the things that were in the book that I just learned. So we literally had like a 3-hour conversation of him explaining the book to me.
And I'm like, why read it when I can just tell you? Apparently was our logic. It's like, let's put down the book for now and I'll just talk you through the book.
Well, because I was so the first book was really good. The second book was okay. When it got down to like the third or fourth book, you literally had to walk me through that because that book was so confusing.
I loved the third book. I did not really care for the second one. Loved the third one. And I hated the fourth one. Did not like it. And then
I liked the first one and then the third one, and then the second one I didn't really like, and then the fourth one you had to walk me through it because I was so confused.
well, because it was from Ash's point of view. Not that anybody here. Okay, we need to stop talking about it because we're going to start spoiling this for people who might want to read this. So, I guess we're going to end off with some book tips of the day for these poor people.
The books showed, just a heads up if you guys do want to read the books go from the main character's point of view to the side character's point of view, by the way. I feel like we should point that out. I did not know that, and so for like, on the very fourth book, I was so confused. I had no idea what was going on.
Yes, there are POV changes throughout the series, but
it took me quite a while to figure that out.
But don't you worry. If you all want to read The Iron Fae, which apparently was the second topic book for today, I'll leave a link in the description where you can buy them on Amazon. They're really good. I highly recommend them.
I do too. They were really good.
As far as any tips I can offer you if you're looking to read a new series, my problem with reading any new series is the overwhelming feeling of, oh my god, look at all these books. It takes a lot of perseverance in the beginning to pick up a book and read the series, especially if you're a beginning reader. So I recommend if you're just now starting to get into reading, and a lot of people get into it at an early age. Let me tell you, I was the type of person who didn't start reading books until I was in high school. Or at least like in late middle school, like junior high. And so I started with shorter books and then worked my way up to longer books. Because to me, the shorter the book, the easier it was to get hooked on them. But that overwhelming feeling, and I still get that sometimes if I pick up a huge series, it's like 6 books long, and each of the books is like 800 pages. You pick it up and just let yourself get absorbed. Drink that cup of coffee and get absorbed into the story. And then all of a sudden you realize all this time has passed and you're halfway through the book and you realize, oh my god, I've been sitting here for 5 hours. That's happened to me a lot.
True story. Him and I don't even know what book we were reading. It wasn't the Iron Fae series. Me and him were reading some random book together. And we were just chit-chatting about the book, and we did not realize, but it had been 5 hours.
Yep. And if you're one of those people that like reading in a group, and you have a friend who likes reading, definitely get with that friend and start reading. It helps the time pass by a lot more if you're afraid of, if reading the book is that dreading. Because when you're reading it together and then you're comparing and talking about your favorite parts, it makes reading the book a lot more enjoyable. That's what my mother and I used to do. Like, we would sit down and we would read the same series and then just talk about it for hours.
Or if you don't understand something about the book, they can explain it to you, especially if they've already read the book.
Call your friend at 3 o'clock in the morning and see how that goes for you. Not everybody's going to be as generous as I am.
True story, we call each other frequently at 3 o'clock in the morning, especially when I'm reading a random book series he's recommended me, because I'm like, I don't understand this. Or, hey, let's have a 3 a.m. conversation about whatever book I'm reading. Most of the time, he'll go along with it. He might fall asleep every once in a while, but he wakes up and we start talking about it again.
Yeah, I get this phone call like, Kai, help me, I'm having a midnight crisis at 3 o'clock in the morning.
In fact, my midnight crisis was yesterday, and that's what got us planning a road trip at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm just like,
And
so
of
do you feel
course,
about
he was
Colorado
talking.
next year? Colorado sound good to you?
I said, I was like, "Hey, guys, let's go to Colorado." I was not expecting you to say yes, by the way.
Let's get an
I was,
Airbnb. Stay in the mountains.
I was fully expecting you to say that. Yeah, and then I said, "Hey, how long do you think we're gonna be staying there?" Like, I'm already looking at Airbnbs for next year. Next year, should I mention next year? Like in May.
The
So,
mountains.
but there's also a book ball going on next year as well.
Yes, I
May
think that'll be the highlight of the
24th.
trip.
We get to dress up in pretty clothes and go to this random with other book lovers.
And sadly, since only one of us is 21, I'll have to enjoy the full experience and then explain it vividly to her.
I'm the DD. I'm the designated driver. But no, back to advice on books. Do research on the books because I quite a few times Kai has given me the names of books and I'm like, doesn't sound interesting, sounds boring. And then I look them up and
Excuse
I'm like,
you!
no. And then I'm like, never mind. This is actually really interesting. Or this seems cool. Or I like this. And I end up reading them, and I love them.
I say first things first, find a cover that looks beautiful. I'm sorry, I know they say never judge a book by its cover. I judge books by their covers. And if the cover has if the book has a really pretty cover, then I pick it up. And then I read the title, and then I flip it around and read the description. If the description catches my eyes, then I buy it. Oh, and also, never buy a full series to begin with. Buy the first book, read it, and if you like it, then go back and buy the rest of them. But do not. I have done that before where I bought a whole series thinking, oh, this sounds really good. And then it wasn't. I realized,
No,
oh, well, I
piece of
just wasted
advice.
$80 on
Buy
this.
it. No, piece by piece. Buy it book by book. For example, my dad's girlfriend got me the Harry Potter series, and I love Harry Potter, so I was immediately into it. Well, my nephew wanted to read them, so I let him read them. Well, then his mom had told my nephew, or had told her son, my nephew, that the Percy Jackson series was kind of like Harry Potter. And so she spent all this money buying him the Percy Jackson series, and he doesn't like half the books.
He doesn't know a good book,
One,
then.
one because he didn't do his research like I told him he should, and then two, because he just assumed it was going to be like a certain series, and because he liked that certain series, or it was based on similar things, that he'd automatically like it, and he didn't.
I love Greek and Egyptian mythology. So, and Rick Riordan, I know we're going off another tangent and we're going to have to end this soon. But just to point out, Rick Riordan is a great author. I have all his books, and I mean all of them. And there are a lot of them. I think I have most, I mean, there's like 20 or 30 books on my bookshelf that are just his. I have all the Percy Jackson books, all the Blood of Olympus. I have the Kane Chronicles. I have the Norse God series. I have the what's the other ones? I have all of them, pretty sure. I have all of like the Apollo series. So,
Who was that one author who you have a bunch of books from?
and then I have all of Cassandra Clare's books. And there's a lot of
Yeah,
those
that's
too.
you recommended me quite a few books, and I love them.
Yes, Cassandra Clare is an excellent author. The Mortal Instruments and the Infernal Devices series were both really, really good. And her covers were beautiful, so I mean that's a plus too. Okay, I think we've talked these poor people's ears off enough for one day.
Yeah, this was only supposed to be 30 minutes, and it's going on close to an hour.
Yep, 52 minutes is what my timer says. So, I hope you all enjoyed getting to know us. Like I said, the next episode of this, we're going to be doing reviews and talks about the app development itself, like what our thoughts on the current VIP program and stuff like that. But the next
book are we
episode will
gonna
be
be
a little
talking
more
about?
focused. I guess, should we pick a book right now so they have something to look forward to?
Yeah, we should.
Okay, let's find a book. What book should we review? You pick a
Hold on,
genre
I'm
and I'll
looking.
pick a book. Let's go to the genre list.
Ooh,
We got romance, drama, adventure, historical, teen, horror, the LGBTQ, fantasy, slice of life.
horror.
You want horror?
Yes.
Okay. Then we'll review... Let's review Bloodbound.
Ooh, yay.
That was one of my favorites. We're going to do a throwback to Bloodbound. And then the next time we do one will be a more modern book. I don't want to do all the VIP books right now because right now I have to honestly say I don't like a lot of them. And I'm not saying we're only going to be reviewing books that we like, but at the same time, they're not all fully released right now. And we are both part of the VIP program, but I don't want to review a book that's not fully released. And I don't like really doing them by the chapter. Because I'm not here to review by the chapter. I'm here to give you my thoughts on the entire book. So
I'm somewhat part of the VIP program, so some of the books I'm able to read, and some of the newer ones I'm not, which is really weird.
It is, and there's a glitch in their system. But, anyways, I hope you all look forward to our review on Bloodbound coming next week, hopefully.
But then I can play First Comes Love. Perfectly fine.
We are so doing a review on First Come Love. We need to stop talking right now. Otherwise, this is going to go on for another 30 minutes.
Wait, why is First Come Love one of the newer books, right?
Yes. It's the
newer-ish.
It's the road trip book.
Yeah.
But, anyways, sorry for talking y'all's ears off. We'll let you go now.
Why are we apologizing? That talking is what we do. They're just gonna have to get used to it.
Okay, you know what? You're right. I'm not apologizing anymore. Y'all will just have to deal with it. But anyways, I hope y'all...
Especially if we start talking about books, you know how we get when we start talking about books.
I hope you all enjoyed this first episode of the KNN Choices podcast. And we will talk to you all in the next episode. Any parting words or advice, Nessa?
No.
Wow, how inspiring of you. We'll talk to you all later.